Hey everybody, welcome back to another video, and in this video today, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, it's kind of difficult for me to keep track with all the comments and theories that you guys are having on the Markiplier lore videos, so I thought, what better time than now to dedicate a whole Markiplier theory to replying to y'all's comments. So without further ado, let's begin. Sorry if I mess up anybody's name, but Echo says, if actor is in Space with Markiplier, then is he actually immortal before the canon end of part 2, or is that just a plot point in the story? Also, if Mac replaces the actor in part 2 for a short while, then is Mac the actor or an entirely different person? Also, when does the Wharf Stash interviews Markiplier video take place in the timeline? For that first question, no, actor Mark would not be immortal, I don't think, because actor Mark actually is not in Space with Markiplier, except for that one little cameo there, but that doesn't mean too much. The engineer Mark that we are with throughout all of In Space with Markiplier is not actor Mark. Because even though actor Mark was filming In Space with Markiplier whenever he had his little cameo, that was not in the same timeline where In Space with Markiplier actually takes place. So that means there's two versions of In Space with Markiplier. And the version that we are watching throughout both parts of In Space with Markiplier is its very own timeline, separate from everything else in the Markiplier lore. Therefore, if anybody is actually immortal before the canon end of part 2, it would more likely be Engineer Mark instead of Actor Mark. More specifically, the Engineer Mark that is in its very own timeline, meaning that it's not the same person as Actor Mark. And for that second question, I feel like during part 2, whenever you do actually get to see Mac, the universes are all colliding, all messing up, all glitching. So I feel like Mac is most likely just Engineer Mark from a different universe. And for the Wharf Stash interviews Markiplier video, I'd assume that takes place probably sometime around a heist with Markiplier, maybe a little bit before, just based off of the clothes that Wharf Stash wears. And also, as I was just rewatching that video, I realized the dialogue that Markiplier has throughout that video does kind of bring up some questions that I might be mentioning in a future theory, so stay tuned for that. And here's another one from Echo. Sorry if I keep on messing up your name. He says, Murderer Markiplier, Illinois, Engineer Mark, and Yancey are probably just actor and character. But I don't know, maybe he's entirely different. Also, Jim. Also, isn't Darkiplier Damien? Wasn't that confirmed in the alternate ending of Damien? Yes, Darkiplier is Damien, but I also think that Darkiplier is Celine at the same time. Now, a lot of people disagree with me on that because they think that Celine is now Mrs. Whitaker, but I feel like Mrs. Whitaker from In Space with Markiplier is more likely to be a Celine ego, like how there's all these Markiplier alter egos. That's just a Celine alter ego from a different dimension, since In Space with Markiplier is already separate from the Markiplier lore timeline. And also, I don't really think Murderer Markiplier would be able to be Actor Mark, especially if Abe is the one trying to hunt down Murderer Markiplier in his actual cameo of In Space with Markiplier Part 2. Because if Actor Mark was Murderer Markiplier, or as one of the other comments said, Murderplier, then why would Abe even go to Actor Mark's party later on in his life in Who Killed Markiplier? As for Illinois, we don't really have any proof on whether or not he is Actor Mark, and in Markiplier's 10-year live stream, he already said that Engineer Markiplier isn't Actor Mark, although Actor Mark is Engineer Mark, which I did make a whole other theory video about. And as for Yancey, I have a whole other Markiplier theory all about him coming soon. So thank you, Echo, and thank y'all for putting y'all's thoughts and theories about the Markiplier lore in the comments. I really genuinely do appreciate it whenever y'all do. So now let's move on to the next comments. So this next comment is from Marison Baggins. Something I find really cool in the Markiplier lore is that you get a role upgrade from each of the main Markiplier stories. Date, Who Killed Markiplier, Heist, and Space. In Date, we are Mark's date. In Who Killed Markiplier, we are the district attorney. In Heist, we start as Markiplier's partner in crime. then it depends on where we end up from the 6 storylines in Heist. Then finally, in Space with Markiplier, we are the captain of the Invincible 2. Now, I don't think we're playing the same person in each of these projects, but I do agree that is really cool. And it also kind of makes you wonder, who are you going to play for the next project? Some sort of ruler of the world or something? Again, sorry if I mess up anybody's name, but Mari says, my only question about Mark's lore is how can the viewer still be involved in adventures like Heist or Date or in Space if technically we as the viewer died in Who Killed Markiplier and became the body of Dark. Now, I did mention this a little bit in that last comment I replied to, but I don't think we're playing as the same person throughout each of these projects. My best assumption is that definitely in Who Killed Markiplier, we're just another Markiplier alter ego, that is the district attorney. And then since In Space with Markiplier takes place in a whole other timeline, I think we're definitely playing a different character in there. However, I do think that the person we play as in Space with Markiplier is a different universe version of the guy we play as in A Date with Markiplier. Because if you pick romance as your first choice in Space with Markiplier Part 2, then you get to see An Evening with Markiplier, which I consider to be a kind of sequel-ish thing to A Date with Markiplier. And that's because you and Markiplier actually end up trying to go on a second date before everything glitches out and you go into a different universe. So for that to be the case, you as the captain must have looked pretty similar to the person you play as in A Date with Markiplier. So yeah, with that said, let's go to the next comment. So this next one is talking about my video where I asked the question, is Engineer Markiplier the same person as Actor Markiplier? And Phoenix says Markiplier confirmed they're not the same person. I mean, in that video, I did literally show Markiplier saying the words, Engineer Markiplier isn't Actor Mark, but Actor Mark might just be Engineer Mark. Here, I'll play it again for anybody who missed it.
Engineer Mark is not Actor Mark, but Actor Mark might just be Engineer Mark.
So this next comment is from Netro, and it says, it can't be before Heist because the scientist recognizes us as the anomaly in the puppet bit in part 2 of In Space with Markiplier. If you're kind of confused on what this means out of context, pretty much in multiple past theories, I stated that In Space with Markiplier part 2 takes place before a Heist with Markiplier. Now, I've already said this a couple times in this video, but pretty much you can't really fit In Space with Markiplier Part 1 and Part 2 on the Markiplier timeline because it takes place on its very own timeline. And even in Space with Markiplier Part 2, you end up traveling through multiple timelines, and one of those timelines being the Markiplier Lore timeline, also known as the one where Who Killed Markiplier and A Heist with Markiplier and all those other Markiplier projects take place. And to be honest, whenever I say that In Space with Markiplier Part 1 and Part 2 take place before A Heist with Markiplier, the only reason I say that is because at the end of In Space with Markiplier Part 2, whenever the captain throws the blue crystal into like a different portal or a different wormhole, that wormhole ends up bringing the blue crystal to the Markiplier lore timeline, therefore sparking the events of A Heist with Markiplier. And for that one moment you're talking about, where the puppet version of the scientist lady calls you the anomaly, the fact that you and her are literally puppets makes me think that that might not even be the Markiplier lore timeline. So yeah, all that's pretty confusing, but anyways, let's move on to the next comment. Now this is probably going to be the last comment for today. Shout out to Chaos Cards Official. Again, sorry if I got the name wrong. Pretty much he says that I believe Part 0 may take place in Heist. Now, as you know, in one of the endings in Space with Markiplier, you hold on to Engineer Mark and the crystal ends up in the A Heist with Markiplier timeline. A Heist with Markiplier currently sits at 39 million as I'm writing this, so it is possible to assume that it could have been at 11 million if you traverse all the way deep into the museum sewers in A Heist with Markiplier. You end up using a device that seems to be similar to the warp crystal, perhaps a working fragment of it. Before I continue reading this, I want to say yes, I do agree with him. I definitely think that that is the blue crystal from In Space with Markiplier. It transports you to an abundance of places, most noteworthy in space, near the spaceship. I do remember that, yes, I do. Perhaps the first Invincible? I know, the Invincible one probably looked similar to the Invincible 2, but there might be a reasonable explanation. Alright, let's give it the good old college try. Sneaky like. So to get to the ending he was talking about, which tunnel was it? It was the dark tunnel, I'm pretty sure. We had to stay with him the entire time. We don't split up. We don't split up again. We do not split up again.
Museums.
One last time. Really? Don't split up. And now this is the ending he was talking about, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you're going through all the dimensions. Let me find the one where he's in space, right there. But unfortunately, as you can see here, it only has 3 million views. Unfortunately, this cannot be In Space with Markiplier Part 0. Man, that kind of sucks though, because that would make so much sense if A Heist with Markiplier was In Space with Markiplier. That would make so much sense, especially because In Space with Markiplier was supposed to be kind of like a sequel to A Heist with Markiplier. So it's like whenever he first announced In Space with Markiplier, it was like kind of advertised a tiny bit as like the sequel for A Heist with Markiplier. So that would have made so much sense if A Heist with Markiplier was Part 0. But unfortunately, it doesn't have enough views. So anyways, let's continue reading. Also, another route, you and Mark end up in prison after you stunt with the helicopter, which hands him, obviously, in prison. 5 years parole lore here? Question mark? Perhaps. Anyways, continuing on that, getting free route for your efforts, you get a universal skeleton key. Universal, opens any door. Seems pretty In Space with Markiplier lore to me. But continuing on the 5 years of parole lore, it could in a sense be In Space with Markiplier Part 0, because in one possible universe where the object in the box was the warp watch, he was going to use the technology to go into space. His project during parole may have been with another person. Technically, that person is us, the audience, but it could also be anyone. Mooring the life he wanted so bad, in a sense, he could have been Engineer Markiplier. In Space with Markiplier Part 0 check. Boop. So now we're going to go to the prison and see if that has more 11 million views or more. Okay, so guns blazing. Helicopter, helicopter. Okay, so from this point on, we are in prison, and this is where you get every single one of the other prison routes, especially the one with the kind of bone key that he was talking about. But the thing is, it already has 7.5 million views, which is already less than the established 11 million views that Part 0 should have. So unfortunately, everything past this should technically have less than 7.5 million views, which unfortunately means that none of this prison stuff could be In Space with Markiplier Part 0. All of these are so good of candidates, and shout out to this commenter who came up with all these ideas. And they all make lots of sense. They all have really good proof with them. But the fact that Markiplier said that Part 0 has 11 million views is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because now that's one more hint that makes us closer to what the answer could be, but it's also a curse because now it seems like absolutely nothing is actually In Space with Markiplier Part 0. I've been trying to find out what it is for like 3 videos now or something. We'll find it eventually, guys, don't worry. But wait, there's more. In Who Killed Markiplier, there's a groundskeeper. Don't worry, I forgot his name too. He's lived on the grounds for years. Perhaps he's the Colonel's father.
I am your father.
bully!
In this theoretical situation, I propose that he and Mark grew up together because of this. That would make a lot of sense, actually, and was only allowed to because the chef cared for the groundskeeper. At some point, the colonel has an affair with Celine, and Mark grew jealous, but couldn't just kill him, so he put him in Jumanji. It wasn't canon. Yeah, it is canon, by the way. And that is how Celine studied the out cult. She was trying to get him out, and the groundskeeper saw that Mark trapped the colonel, and that is why he never went back in the house. That is an unsolved mystery. What was the groundskeeper talking about like his streak of never going into that house, and there was only one event that would bring him back there? All that is still kind of unanswered. But anyways, at some point, the colonel got out. He continued his adventures out in the jungle since he got accommodated to the Jumanji jungles, and a safari hunt went wrong. Mark saw the opportunity to finish him off, and then Who Killed Markiplier happened. You know what? That does actually tie together a lot of unanswered questions. Although you would think that if the groundskeeper was the colonel's father, you'd think the colonel would join them to go talk to the groundskeeper, but I guess not. Unfortunately, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. I know there was still a ton of comments that I missed. Porky Fella, Lost Kid, I haven't forgotten about y'all. It's just this video's already getting long enough. So with that said, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next video.